Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Gilliland, and welcome to another installment of The Legal Geeks. Today, we are with Jessica Mederson, my partner in geekdom, and we are going to address one of Jessica's favorite
Hi, Josh.
favorite TV shows of all time. So, Jessica, how you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, Josh. How are you?
Excellent. So, Jessica, what are we going to be talking about today?
Today, in honor of its 30th anniversary, which makes me feel old, we are going to be discussing the excellent TV sitcom Cheers.
Excellent. Now, have you been to the original Cheers?
I have been to the actual Cheers, or the rest, or the bar that, of course, was the basis or part of the inspiration for Cheers. I also, in a life before law school, spent a lot of time at the official Cheers franchise bar and restaurant in the Kansas City airport. Ate many a meal there with the cutout Cliffs and Norms.
Rock on. So let's dive in. So when we think of Cheers, which time period do you prefer more? The period with Diane and Coach, or with Woody and Rebecca?
I love them all. They obviously all have their strengths and some fabulous things about them, but I do think I'm a classic Cheers fan. I prefer the early years with both Diane and Coach when they were there, and obviously there was different time periods for all of them, but
Okay.
I'm a Diane and Coach fan.
You know,
How about you?
I don't know. Probably, yeah, I like them all, but probably more Diane and Coach myself as well. So, what character,
Yeah.
what character do you relate to the most?
Maybe this is why I like the Diane and Coach years. I've been accused many times of being a Diane, and so I do relate somewhat to Diane. Hopefully not quite as prissy as she was, but there are some similarities. I also always had a soft spot for Cliff because I love all like the useless trivia, and I can sit there expounding on trivia all night. So I was a big Cliff fan.
As am I. I've been accused of being, Cliff many times. Being able to name all the vice presidents in order, and it's a little known fact. Unlike other submarines, this one has wheels. That's
Yes.
that's the stuff I'm good at. So, gotta love Cliff. Which brings us to who was your favorite guest
Yes.
star or guest spot, on the series?
Well, see, and that was one of the neat things about Cheers, is it's kind of like Seinfeld or some other good shows, but other shows like that, where you saw a lot of people go through who then later went on to have their own shows or become famous in other areas. And so my favorite was Harry Anderson, the con man, who of course later on went on to be a judge on Night Court.
And a phenomenal show in and of itself. But that's for that
That's
leads us
right.
for another discussion. But let's talk about the most famous, repeat character who had his own TV show later that was extremely successful. And who's that in your opinion?
Well, certainly one of the most famous, or went on to a lot of success, and then of course some infamy, was Kramer from Seinfeld, who makes an early appearance on season 3 of Cheers, actually as Eddie Gordon, and it's the very dark side of
This is true.
Kramer.
This is true. So let's talk about some of the contract issues that we see in the show.
But what happened, of course, in this episode, this is the one where Eddie Gordon shows up, and he had been a drinking buddy of Sam's almost a year ago. Sam had fallen back into his drinking ways after he and Diane split up at the end of season 2. And one night when he was drinking tequila with Eddie, he apparently made a bet with Eddie that he would be able to marry Jacqueline Bisset within the year. And Jacqueline Bisset, this is even before my time, but she's still beautiful. She was a beautiful, famous actress.
No,
You know.
keep
No,
going.
what?
Keep going.
What are you saying? But anyway, so Sam had said that he could marry her within the year, and he'd even written up, the wager, I guarantee that I'll marry Jacqueline Bisset within 1 year, or he gives the bar to Eddie. So Eddie shows up the day before the bet's about to come due and wants to cash in. He wants the bar.
Yeah.
And so the question, of course, is this an enforceable
Well,
contract?
is it? So
It's funny too because there's a wannabe lawyer on Cheers that they make fun of all the time, Tom, who I forget how many times he's failed the bar, and it's always funny all the grief they give him. And he says, well, you know, this isn't a contract because one, it's a wager, not a contract, and two, Sam was drunk when he signed it. And with regard to the first one, the fact that it's a wager, not a contract, I don't think that that's an absolute, that means there's no contract here. But because there doesn't appear to be any consideration, you know, if Sam loses or if Sam doesn't comply under the contract, he loses a bar, but Eddie doesn't have to put up any consideration. So usually you need some form of mutual consideration. I don't know what, you know, lawyers can always make arguments, but I don't know what argument could be made that there's the mutual consideration there. So that's one aspect. But the big one and the big misperception is that people always say, well, you can't actually sign a contract if you're drunk. And while that is kind of a general rule, is that you don't have the capacity to understand what you're signing if you're drunk, the courts actually will look and say, you know what, that's not an absolute bright line defense. I mean, we have to see how drunk were you. Even if you were drunk, did you still appreciate what you were signing? And if you did, they're still going to hold you to it.
Yeah,
even if you were
and
drinking.
you know there are big issues with that and fun issues. You know, to look at the stuff that you know professors have enjoy on law school exams. But yeah, that's a huge misconception. And again, it would be fun to look at this as potentially like not a form of a unilateral contract, like a prize reward. You know, like with like SpaceX. You know, who can put a space plane in into low Earth orbit the first and claim the X prize. You know, so you can play with it that way. But again, I agree with your analysis of this because it was a wager, not a contract. And so again, but fun stuff. Well, excellent. This brings back many happy memories of the 1980s. Going through.
I want to sing this theme song now, but I won't.
Or going through Faneuil Hall and going like, "Hey, there's Cheers," and being able to see that. Even though in Boston, I do prefer the Green Dragon. So that's my where Paul Revere planned his ride. So I prefer that one. But who doesn't?
Of course.
But excellent. Well, thank you so much for your thoughts on Cheers, and Cliff, wherever you are, God bless you, buddy. And thank you, everyone. And stay geeky, America. Stay geeky.